What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to today's Locked On Reds podcast. Today, we have a special crossover edition. I had a couple of crossovers this week. Happy to always do those. We have Ethan Smith from Locked On Pirates to preview this 4-game series between the Buccos and the Redlegs. And we're going to be talking all about this series. Probably got a question or two about what's going on with things in the farm system, guys coming up. And the Reds are coming back to full strength, so this should be an interesting weekend for baseball at Great American Ballpark. Before we get into all of that, though, I wanted to let you know that you can check out our pal Sully on the Locked On MLB podcast. He takes a look around the league each and every day, and with his wealth of knowledge, whether it comes to baseball present or baseball past, he will impart it to you each and every day. Check it out, the Locked On MLB podcast, wherever you get your podcast. But for now, let's talk some Reds and Pirates.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, you are. You're Locked On Reds. I'm your host, Jeff Carr. I've got Ethan Smith coming up here in just a moment. Before we get into that, make sure that you're subscribed right here on the YouTube channel and that you're following the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. You can also follow me on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs and follow the show at Locked On Reds. And save the Locked On Reds line number into your phone at 513-549-0159 for comments, questions, reactions, whatever you've got. Tomorrow, we're going to jump into a bunch of those. I got some that I need to catch up on. We're going to talk about the Reds. And you can join me today, Spotify Green Room, later this afternoon. All right, let's bring him in. He is Ethan Smith. He is the host of Locked On Pirates. And the Reds and Buccos are set to square off for 4 games this weekend. After only playing the Twins for 2, it's like, all right, we go from a 2-game series to a 4-game series, but you know what, whatever. Before we get into all that, though, Ethan, how you doing, man?
Doing all right. You can clearly see based off of what I'm wearing that I'm ready for football to be back. But I will also say covering the Pirates now on a podcast, I guess, is like kind of an expert per se. Usually this is around the time of year where I just get out of Pirates baseball. But I'm very excited to see what happens over these last 2 months. There's a lot to watch, not really in terms of what people would know outside of Pittsburgh, but there's a lot to watch in terms of what you could be looking for as a Pirates fan. A lot.
I have a friend from Pittsburgh who I was trying to talk crap to him the other day, and he's just like, whatever, the Hall of Fame game's on. I don't care about baseball anymore. We're on to football. But I do care about baseball, and I know that you do too. And we got 4 games coming up between the Reds and the Buccos. It's been an interesting year for both of our teams. The Reds are contending, like holding on by a thread to contention, and there are some future aspects of the Pirates falling into place, and they kind of, all right, firstly, though, I want to ask, because they didn't trade him, so have they doubled down? Are they just going to keep Brian Reynolds forever?
For what I would say right now, it seems that it appears yes. I mean, we have team control over the guy until I think 2026 in his age 30 season. I've been calling for him to get an extension through 2030, as well as my good friend Gary Morgan, who comes on the podcast every Monday, has also been advocating for the same thing, because it's like the guy is absolutely killing it right now. He's like hitting 308. He has all this other stuff going for him. And the only guy I believe that is beating him average or like across the slash lines right now is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So that's some pretty damn good company to be in. And realistically, if the Pirates were not as bad as they were, you have to seriously consider Bryan Reynolds as an MVP candidate at this point, especially with Jacob deGrom out as how he's been. I've been following the Reds because you're in my division, but I don't know if Nicholas Castellanos is still at that upper echelon that he's been at this year. And then you really look across the NL. Tatis has been hurt. Acuna's hurt. A lot of the guys that you would think would be like in that MVP conversation have not had the greatest of years. Juan Soto as well. Bryan Reynolds could be getting some MVP votes at the end of the year. I'm not saying he's going to win it, obviously, considering the team is in the state it's in, but he has a serious case to like say, I deserve some MVP votes here. And trading that away just isn't a good idea.
It's the age-old discussion of what does MVP truly mean? Are we picking stats or are we picking the guy who is the most valuable to their team?
Mhm.
And let's be honest, whatever good the Pirates have done this season, he has been at the forefront of it.
Yeah, and Adam Frazier was as well. And now that Frazier's not here, some people expected him to take a dip in production. He's taken it up in production. I mean, he's killing it over the last couple games. And realistically, more importantly, I'd say the award he has a way better chance of winning is the Gold Glove Award. He's been phenomenal in center field. Nobody thought that his glove was going to translate to center field at all from left field. It has, and it's done miles. Ben Gamel, even, who I'm watching closely a lot now, could be a potential outfielder for next year's squad. And even Gregory Polanco, who I talked about yesterday, has been having a good run of things as of late. And you know how much I can't stand Gregory Polanco. And I actually talked about him yesterday, potentially playing himself into a contract again. And he's already said he wants to stay in Pittsburgh forever. So when you're 100% on base stealing right now with him, where I believe he's 13 for 13 now, he gets on base 4 times in a game against the Brewers, saves a game against the Brewers, the only game we won in that series, where he has a crazy home run snag catch that like shouldn't have been caught anyway, but he caught it anyways after he said Brewers fans were berating him the whole game about the Pirates being bad. That might just be your outfield again next year, and there's no issue really with it. But, I mean, what the thing with Reynolds is I don't see why we would ever trade him. If we did, obviously, I remember telling you this and telling everybody this, especially Dylan Short over at Locked On Braves. The asking price is what it is, and it's going to stay that way. It's going to be 2 top 100% prospects and another prospect of high caliber. Have fun paying that if you want to pay it.
I think he's going to join. He's going to be the NL version of Whit Merrifield. Like, I feel like Whit Merrifield is always on the trade block, according to reporters, and the Royals just never do because they don't want to trade him. And I don't think the Pirates will either. Because talking about like MVPs, like I think back to 2017, whenever Joey Votto missed out by 1 vote. Obviously, the Reds weren't good at all in 2017, but whatever good they did was mostly because of how good he was. Like, he never got out that year. And I think that that's why guys who like Brian Reynolds should be at least considered. I'll be interested to see how Castellanos comes back from his injury, the microfracture in his wrist. He isn't going to need any rehab time. He's been taking BP for the last couple of days, and they say that he's going to be ready at some point this weekend. Some reports even have him maybe playing tonight. Well, we'll have to see what the lineup entails, but how he initially comes back from this absence of a couple of weeks is going to determine a lot of his MVP candidacy, because we've been talking about him as up there, and that was when Tatis was healthy, and that was when Acuna was healthy as well. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he reinserts his name back in there with Acuna and maybe Tatis. I know there's no concrete news about Tatis's future this season, but maybe him not coming back either.
Yeah, and I mean, it opens the door, especially if you're just talking about straight MVP. It opens the door for a lot of people. I mean, a Max Muncy in LA could get there. Bryce Harper is quietly having a really good year again. And I know this might be wild to say, but why not Trevor Rogers or Brendan Rodgers, or I can't even think of his name in Miami.
Yeah, Trevor Rogers.
Yeah, like, I mean, why not? There's very big possibilities of that. And then obviously for you guys, and I know you'll probably speak about this in some light, but I preached up to high hell that Ke'Bryan Hayes was going to win Rookie of the Year this year. Obviously, he's not going to because he missed a good chunk of the year. But now all of a sudden, Jonathan India, instead of Dylan Carlson, seems to be the guy that I was supposed to be worried about.
I cannot believe how much he's taken off, and we're actually going to talk about that here in just a minute, because it's been a phenomenal year for him. I frankly, I've been surprised. I did not expect this at all, and I could not be happier. But before we expound on that, I wanted to let you know that we all understand dinner time can be chaotic, but with Freshly, it's easy. Their chefs take care of your meals a few nights a week, and they take the pressure off you. Freshly offers chef-made, nutrient-packed, delicious meals delivered fresh to your door. No cooking required. Grocery shopping and cooking can be a pain, especially right now. And with Freshly, you don't have to. Your meals arrive cooked and fresh every week so that you can keep your fridge stocked and skip the trip to the store. Ordering is easy. Visit freshly.com and choose from over 30 delicious, satisfying, better for you meals like steak peppercorn, sausage baked penne, or their chicken pesto bowl. Right now, Freshly is offering our listeners $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to freshly.com/locked on. Stop stressing about dinner. Go to freshly.com/locked on for $40 off your first 2 orders. That's freshly.com/locked on for $40 off your first 2 orders. And before we get back to our Jonathan India talk, which I love so much, I also wanted to let you know that you can go to rockauto.com and get your next car part delivered right to your door. Rockauto.com has all of the parts that your car will ever need, and they've got an easy-to-use interface as well. Whether you know exactly the brand of shock that you want for your car, or you're not even sure exactly what a shock is, rockauto.com can help you out. They've got every single, whether you're talking about a classic car, if you're trying to restore like an old Chevy Bel Air, or if you're trying to fix your everyday driving Honda Civic, they've got parts for your car. Check them out today. And when you're in the checkout section in the How'd You Hear About Us area, type in Locked On to let them know that your pal Jeff and your pal Ethan sent you from the Locked On Reds and Pirates podcast. That's rockauto.com. And in the checkout section in the How'd You Hear About Us area, type in Locked On. Rockauto.com has all of the parts your car will ever need, and they've got reliably low prices at that. All right, Jonathan India has been a revelation, and I've talked about it ad nauseum. I feel like he should definitely be in the conversation. Trevor Rogers has had a phenomenal year, and just for kicks, I was looking at WAR, and Trevor Rogers does have a 3 WAR compared to Jonathan India's 2.1, so there is a bit of a difference there. And that's just looking at Baseball
A little
Reference.
bit of a war, huh?
Yeah, I mean that's the beginning of understanding. I'm not going to say that.
Sorry,
The whole bit. But there's plenty of arguments to be had because, I mean, you talk about a dude who in spring training really wasn't even considered to be a big contributor. And then all of a sudden they say, let's take this guy who's come up as a third baseman and put him at second base. And then let's take this guy who has been batting in the bottom of the lineup and killing it and gone through a 5 for 56 slump. Let's put him in the leadoff spot. That was a little bit risky, but he has been the best Reds leadoff hitter since Shin-Soo Choo, who was frankly phenomenal back in 2012. And I love everything that the Reds have gotten out of Jonathan India. And I cannot believe that over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been advocating that they trade this guy for some kind of pitching help or lineup help. He's been phenomenal.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, that happens here in Pittsburgh all the time too. Josh Harrison was a lot like that. If you remember Josh Harrison, he was a lot like that when he was here. He was good enough, but then people were like, well, somebody else could really use him and get us some pitching help. And I was like, no, he means too much. Then he had that crazy play against the Mets where he was in a rundown and somehow beat it off. And I think that was literally the craziest play I've ever seen. And that was before, of course, that I saw, Javi Baez at the Will Craig thing, as I always have to bring that up in every crossover. I think it's becoming a joke at this point. But the thing is with the Reds, and as you said, I mean, standings-wise, 7.5 back of the Brewers. But, I mean, again, it's kind of nuts right now. The Brewers have the same record as the Dodgers and a 4-game lead on the Padres. So you guys – realistically, depending on what Tatis has to deal with, it's kind of scary. That would be very unfortunate not for you, but it'd be very unfortunate for the Padres, especially getting that much talent in the offseason, getting Adam Frazier from us and the Pirates just to miss the playoffs because of an unfortunate injury.
Look, don't get me wrong. There is a catcher who plays in St. Louis who will remain unnamed that I don't like. But I would never wish any sort of injury on him. I love Fernando Tatis. There's not a chance in hell that I would wish that bad news came down on this dude. But it does mean that the Reds' door opens a little bit more wide and a chance to catch this Padres side. And especially, I mean, we've talked ad nauseum here on the podcast about the Reds' schedule and how it looks the final 2 months of the season. It's going to be interesting if they can get back to full health, if they can stay relatively healthy, because all year long it's been, well, Joey came back from injury. Now we're losing Moose. Or you got a big bullpen arm that comes back from injury, but another big bullpen arm goes down. If they can stay relatively healthy and not see big contributors hit the IL like they have all year long, this could be a really interesting final 2 months to the year on a team that coming into the season, I was very demonstrative. That's not the word. Demonstrative sounds like I'm doing something important. I was shouting it out a lot. Let's put it this way, that I was like, it's playoffs or bust. If they don't make the playoffs, this year is a complete failure. And now it's kind of actually seeming possible. I think it's interesting that the Reds are here right now. And this 4-game set, which we haven't even talked about at all, but starting tonight, you got Sonny Gray and you got Will Crowe on the mound.
You guys won tonight.
I'm interested to see. Sonny has been his last start. The first inning looked really rough, and then he settled down. I had that tweet. Maybe if he has a rough first inning today, and I'll tweet something bad, and then he'll settle down again. Mm-hmm. But what can Reds fans expect from Will Crowe?
You're going to see a lot of probably a lot of walks. Will Crowe has not even started, I don't think, as many games as Sonny Gray has, and he has more walks than him. He has a very bad issue of walking batters and giving up home runs. Nothing against the guy. I mean, he has a 5.4 ERA, which on this team is actually not terrible, especially when Mitch Keller's back. So the thing is, though, he's done okay this year. I mean, 66 strikeouts as I am cheating, obviously, looking at everything. But, I mean, away from home, though, he actually isn't that bad. He's 2-1 away from home. Of course, realistically, there's a lot of different things that he could do better. If you look at his last couple starts, I mean, he's almost went 6 innings in all 3. He went 6 innings in his last start against Philly. Only gave up 1 hit, so maybe he builds off of that. He had a different. He's won 3 of his last 4 starts. That's what I'll say. But wins are always based on what the offense does. But he's only given up 11 hits in his last 3 or 4 starts. So it's hit or miss with Will Crowe. Of course, I mean, he was picked up from the Josh Bell trade, but he's not really the prize of that trade. That's Eddie Yean, who's way, way down there in the minors right now because he's only like 18 or 19. But that's what you can expect. You're going to expect to see probably him work around the zone or out of the zone a lot, especially against an offense that knows how to do some stuff. And, I mean, if he can build off of what he did against the Phillies, who also in their own right have a pretty decent offense, maybe they get a good start out of him. And it seems like every time we talk about this, like you say Sonny Gray might do bad, I say Will Crowe might do bad. It's going to be a 0-0 game going into the 7th inning, and they're going to both be pitching a shutout.
It's going to be funny to see because Sonny's control issues have been noted as of late, but I think it's just simply because as soon as he gets into a groove, he goes back on the IL for something. And now, I mean, he looks completely healthy, and I think maybe he can continue that groove. At least I'm hoping so. I did have a question though. So based on what you're saying though, that people around Pittsburgh probably aren't saying pitch like a crow.
No.
Okay, now like fight like a crow, fight milk. Yeah.
No. I mean, it's fun to joke about it. Like, I'll post like a crow gif whenever he does something good. But I mean, there's so many other guys right now, like with the injuries that we have. Like Steven Brault came back for the first time yesterday after a solid 2020, and I don't count 2020 stats, but he still was fine. Miguel Yajure, who had a good start to the year, but he's been injured. Hopefully will be coming back soon. So ideally, I want to see something like Brubaker, Bryce Wilson, who we acquired from the Richard Rodriguez trade, Max Kranick. I mean, at that point, after that, Miguel Yajure and Steven Brault, I'll be fine with it. You also get to see Mitch Keller this weekend, so have fun with that.
I did see he's due on Saturday. So I know that you've been bullish about JT Brubaker. Is that the game that you're kind of pegging like, okay, this is the game where the Pirates might make some noise?
That and Bryce Wilson. Bryce Wilson impressed me a ton in his Pirates debut. He's slated to go Sunday. A lot of people in Atlanta really liked him, and he comes in and he doesn't give up an earned run, or he gave up 1 run, I believe, in his first start against the Brewers. And, I mean, he just played phenomenal. I mean, He wasn't striking guys out, but that's just not who he is. He's not a strikeout pitcher. He's a very much contact, like pitch to contact kind of guy. But if you're pitching to contact and not giving up hits and giving up low exit velocity rates and stuff like that, do as you please, man, honestly. And Bryce Wilson is 23. The kid's young. Getting him for Richard Rodriguez was a win. Because what's the point of having a closer on a team that's 27 whatever amount of games under 500? Not a ton. So now you've added a starting pitcher, though, that could potentially be a back end of the rotation guy in a couple years like he is right now. And maybe that's good for them. But I would look closely at the Brubaker game and the Wilson game. Keller and Crow, those are the two that are kind of like, I don't really know too much about all that.
Well, I'm interested to see, because with the guys that the Reds got going, basically you're looking at everybody but Luis Castillo because he pitched yesterday. You got Tyler Mahle on Sunday, who I think he is extreme. I know he's extremely talented, but I just want to see him be more pitch efficient. He's got this weird home road splits where he actually pitches worse at Great American Ballpark than he does everywhere else. So there might be an interesting matchup there with Bryce Wilson on Sunday. And then the pitching matchup, when you're looking at tomorrow, you got Wade Miley back on the mound, and Saturday, Vlad Gutierrez. Vlad's last start was fantastic. Exactly what you hope for out of him moving forward, if he can just eat innings, because he really prescribes more to the Wade Miley way of pitching than, say, Tyler Mahle or Sonny Gray, where he does not try. It really looks like when they get two strikes, they are trying to throw that perfect pitch and they're trying to paint the corner and get that strikeout. That's not the way Gutierrez is. When Goody's on the mound, it's, I'm trying to make the hitter hit my best pitch, and most of the time he's getting weak contact, he's getting ground balls, lazy fly balls. So he does go a little bit deeper into games than you see Mahle and Gray right now. I'd love to see more guys prescribe to that, but I mean, that's kind of the way the game works now. You get paid for strikeouts, so if you don't strike people out, you're not getting paid. And
yeah, realistically,
it's going to be interesting. I like the Reds' chances here. I think, well, you know what? We'll get into those expectations here in a minute, because I want to shout out our sponsor, betonline.ag. If you set up your profile today and you type in the promo code Locked On, you'll get 50% added onto your initial deposit. It's a lot of money, man. You're going to get $50 if you put in 100 just for typing in Locked On. And from time to time, I like to give you a line or two, something that I'm thinking might be interesting. And I'm looking at our game tonight. I'm looking at the Pirates and the Reds. You got Crow and Gray on the mound. The over-under is set at 9.5. So if the game totals 10 or more, you win. And I think that's an easy bet, because I think that the Reds can put some runs on the boards against Will Crow. And also, as we will detail here in a minute, I think once the Reds bullpen comes in, the Pirates are going to be able to score some runs as well, and they might get a homer or two off Sonny Gray. I think 10 runs is an easy bet in this game, so I'm taking it right now. I got my phone. I'm clicking it. All right, well, I clicked it. Internet's just being weird. But take the over 9.5 on the Reds and Pirates game today, and set up your profile with the promo code Locked On to get 50% added onto your initial deposit. Ethan, I love when technology works.
Yeah. You know who else? R2D2. He loves it too. R2 gives me my betting advice over at betonline.ag. You see, he lets me know what have happened, and we're all good. Yeah, and then I shut him down after the fact. So, there we go.
You guys should utilize this Funko Pop more. Like, hey, Crosshair really sees a good bet. Crosshair is honing in on what. You watch that? You watch The Bad Batch?
Yes.
Oh, I love The Bad Batch.
Trust me, you have to watch a show called The Bad Batch when you cover a bad batch of players on the field.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, they're bad, but they're bad collectively together. They're good individually. They're just not great together. That's kind of been the story of the Pirates season this year. But, I mean, first round pick race is getting very interesting, besides the fact that the Diamondbacks are still 8 games ahead of us right now.
Don't even get me started about that. For some reason, the Diamondbacks are 40 games under 500, and that's to no help of the Reds, because they actually beat the Reds 5 out of 6 times. I think Diamondbacks, I think both teams, we're going to end this year, and the Diamondbacks, if they don't get the number one pick, they're going to look back and they're like, why did we win those 5 games? And the Reds are going to look back if we miss the playoffs and like, why didn't we win those 5 games? Like, I don't know. Anyway, Diamondbacks, I can't. Millard's got bragging rights on me over for the next year. So,
Oh,
yeah,
so
there we go.
he has them on me right now too until we play again. We got swept by Arizona, so
I cannot believe it. They're just so. It's the NL West. There's some kind of magic out there. I don't get it. I mentioned I kind of previewed this in our Bet Online, kind of teased it a little bit. Bullpen, and you mentioned Rich Rod being traded down to Atlanta. What does the Pirates bullpen look like right now? Like the pecking order, how's that fall into line?
Shashawn Shreve, Shea Spitzbarth, David Bednar, and Chris Stratton. That's pretty much what you got. Luis Oviedo is unplayable. He's a Rule 5 player, but at this point, he's unplayable. He faced six batters the other day when he pitched and didn't record an out. So that's kind of not great. And there's some guys that I always miss. Clay Holmes has been – well, not Clay Holmes. He just got traded. Cody Ponce came in yesterday against Milwaukee and had 6 up, 6 down, 3 strikeouts. So you're seeing a lot of different stuff. I think you're going to see a ton of the idea that you're going to see a lot of these pitchers that they're looking at in AAA or even AA come up in September call-ups and kind of just do that. But as of right now, it's closer by committee, but it seems like Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton are leaning more towards David Bednar. But Shashawn Shreve, he's the veteran of the group, so I think he'll probably get more of that nod at that point. But it's a very young bullpen. Shashawn Shreve, I think, and Chris Stratton are the oldest 2 guys in the bullpen, and they're 30. So that can give you an idea of how young this bullpen is after the Austin Davis, Clay Holmes, and Richard Rodriguez trades.
That's good to see. And when it comes to the Reds, man, yesterday Michael Lorenzen got 5 outs to save the game, and I don't think any Reds fan would be stretching it to say, like, we just like to see him pitch like the final 3 innings of every game. Now, don't get me wrong, we like what we've seen out of Michael Gibbons, and Luis Cessa has looked pretty decent, although his last outing there against the Twins, he kind of gave up a lot of hard contact. So you kind of wonder what you're getting from him. Justin Wilson has been okay. Those 2 guys they got from the Yankees. The problem is, whenever I looked at the 3 guys that the Reds got, Gibbons far and away is better than the other 2. The other 2 the Reds got from the Yankees for a player to be named later. Like they traded 1 player to be named later, and they got 2 players whose names we know back. And I think that just tells you all you need to know right there. Like they are better than a lot of the guys the Reds have been running out there all year, but that's also really more of a commentary on who the Reds have been running out there all year than it is to the guys that they got. I think that it's so confusing whenever I look at the front office and the ownership's plan, and really it's not the front office, it's the ownership telling the front office you can't do anything coming into this season. When the window opened last year, they just opened the window by getting into the playoffs. So it's like, all right, let's take a step. And ownership's like, yeah, we'll take a step back with the bullpen. We're paying too much for Raisel Iglesias and RG Bradley, so we'll get rid of them, and we'll be okay. And we've seen it all year long. They are not okay. It's been a coin flip, and a great website that really gives a lot of great information about the Reds Content Plus has called it bullpen roulette. Like literally, you bring someone in, you bring in Amir Garrett, you bring in Brad Brock, you bring in Heath Hembry, and almost with each and every pitch, you spin the barrel. What comes out? Is it a strikeout? Is it a home run? Is it a ground ball? Is it a double? What is it? You never know with those guys, and I'm afraid that Luis Cessa might actually be getting added into that bullpen roulette wheel. It's frustrating to watch.
Yeah, and I can imagine it is. And I mean, realistically, for the Pirates, it's kind of the same way. One day, Cody Ponce, like I said yesterday, he has 6 up, 6 down. Maybe the next time he comes out, he gets 0 of 4 or something like that. It just happens all the time. And it's crazy because I remember when we talked earlier in the year before that first series, the Pirates had one of the better bullpens in all of baseball at one point for a good portion of the beginning of the season. And then, of course, it took the dip that it's taken. But I think, especially with ownership for your mindset, if you guys had Raisel Iglesias and Archie Bradley still, you'd be in the Brewers' territory of pitching. Like, you really would. and that's what's pushing. That's what's pushing the Brewers over everyone else right now. Is even
Andrew
with
Williams.
COVID, even with COVID striking their locker room like it did, and most of them being out in the Pirate series, none of the games in that Pirate series were particularly blowouts. 4-2, 8-5, and if I'm like, I have to scroll all the way down. 4-2, 8-5, and 6-2. You had to see those guys do important things, and it was even worse because you didn't have Josh Hader, you didn't have Christian Yelich, you didn't have guys like that because of COVID. They still stepped it up because they have the depth in a bullpen that you need, and I think that's what could honestly maybe propel them to the World Series if they get to that point in the NLCS. I mean, what other team, if Jacob deGrom isn't healthy in New York, outside of the West, has anything to compete with the Giants, the Padres, and the Dodgers pitching wise? Not tonight.
Definitely.
The Brewers.
Yeah, it's definitely Milwaukee, and I think that's the reason that they've maintained the record that they've had so well. And it's interesting. Somebody said that the last 12 days, whatever the Reds do, because obviously the Reds are trying to make up this huge gap, whatever the Reds do, if they win, the Brewers win. If the Reds lose, the Brewers lose. So each and every day, there's like a little bit of remorse, like, oh my gosh, why didn't they do better earlier on in the season? Why didn't they go for it? Because the Brewers went for it, and they got Willie Adames, and they got Rowdy Tellez, and those guys have really paid off for them ever since coming over in the various trades that they've made.
Mhm.
And you just had the Reds that waited until the last week of the trade deadline to go get anything, and when it comes to help wise. And I mean, here we are. The Reds are hanging on. They've got a shot, but they pretty much can't lose. And which leads me into my prediction. I think for this 4-game set, I think the Reds win it, but I think it's 3-1 because without a doubt, there's going to be a game, whether it be Brubaker or Bryce Wilson pitching amazingly, or it most likely is going to be the bullpen exploding. I mean, they gave up 4 runs to the yesterday afternoon. They were winning 6-1 in the 8th inning. And for whatever reason, Brad Brock didn't throw a strike, walks 2 guys. And then you got it was bad.
Yeah.
They gave up 4 runs in the 8th inning. It was so annoying. And I thought they were going to lose. I really did. And when you have a 5-run lead with 6 outs to get, it's inexcusable to have that sort of worry on your mind, but that's where we are as Reds fans. So I think that there's going to be one game for sure that the Reds bullpen just absolutely blows up and the Pirates take.
I would say 3 or 4 as well for the Reds. I mean, I don't see the Pirates in particular really getting swept by anyone for the rest of the year, except maybe the Dodgers when they play in LA. But, the team, they're going to probably get swept by somebody again. But realistically, go into every series, try to win 1 or 2 and just leave it at that. This team is allergic to sweeping someone, so I've already kind of given that up. And also, random tidbit today, by the way, happy 100th anniversary to KDKA. It's one of the biggest radio stations in all of Pittsburgh. And it was actually, if anybody doesn't know, Anniversary Rise, 100 years ago, KDKA became the first commercial radio station to broadcast an MLB game. It was a Pirates win over the Phillies in Forbes Field. So,
Nice.
100th, big 100 right there for KDKA.
Give you a big Jolly Roger with the number 100. I almost said the letter 100, the number 100. That might mean that we're getting close to the end because I'm starting to talk in like complete circles and stuff. All right, Ethan, this has been a lot of fun previewing this series, talking about guys to look for. I'm not expecting the Reds to get Bryan Reynolds out very much. It's going to be interesting how well they pitch to keep Brian Hayes, because those 2 guys are probably going to be the catalysts for whatever the Pirates end up doing in the series. Definitely Bryan Reynolds for sure. And hopefully the Reds get back healthy with Castellanos, Moose, and Senzel and Sims all this weekend. I am very excited to see those 4 guys returning.
Yeah,
But,
and I mean, it's a good series for them to come back. So
I'm looking forward to it. Shout out your Twitter and everything so that everybody can follow you during the series.
At MVP_Ethan on Twitter and at Locked On Pirates. Of course, I will probably be making some kind of jokes. I don't know what jokes will be made, but they will be made.
Follow him, and then you can also follow me as well if you're on the Pirates side at Jeff Garr with 3 Fs, and you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. Ethan, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for doing this, and looking forward to a great 4 games.
Oh, yeah, of course, as always.
Alrighty. Well, this has been another episode of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and Ethan. Hopefully we have us a fun series to watch this weekend, which starting on Thursday. I love weekends that start on Thursday, but we will recap game 1 and look forward to some other good stuff. Hey, make sure you get your Locked On Reds line stuff 513-549-0159 in for tomorrow's episode. But as for Ethan Smith, I'm Jeff Carr. I will talk to each. See, Ethan, it's time to go. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good.